Already.
I'm done. I gotta stop.
Everybody's gonna be here.
I didn't call him.
Oh, I would say that actually holds the digester down too.
I went to one meeting and kicked me off, so. We'll order one for you.
He was looking for a different appointment, what I was hinting at. We're gonna have Todd.
Yeah, right.
Any reason for me to do both.
Right.
Be a lot easier.
Yeah.
And then turn it over to this. Call the January 4th, 2023 meeting of the Area Plan Commission to order. To comply with Title VI Civil Rights Act of 1964, Decatur County requests that participants in this meeting complete a voluntary anonymous survey that is available on the table in the back of the room. With the first item on our agenda being election, I will turn the meeting over to our lawyer, Missy.
So since it's January 2023, we need to elect officers for this year. So we'll have 3 offices that we will be filling, that of the president, the vice president, and the secretary. I will start with the position of president. Are there any nominations for the position of president?
I'll nominate Todd Maurer.
I nominate Brad.
Nominate first.
Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second that.
Are there any further nominations?
Todd, did you nominate Brad?
I won't do it, no. He sat there for a year, I guess. So.
2 years.
I should have stayed
You
home.
threw
But
me
I was
under the
going
bus 2 years ago.
Hearing no further nominations, we will just do a voice vote. All those in favor of Todd serving as president for 2023 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the second position we have is that of vice president. Are there any nominations for the vice presidency?
Only Brad shooting.
I second.
Any further nominations? Hearing none, I will listen to a vote for Brad serving as vice president. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the third position is that of secretary. Are there any nominations for the secretary for the APC board?
Want to do a sign name?
I'll nominate Sheila.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further nominations for secretary? All those in favor of Sheila serving as secretary for the APC board signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have our slate of offices. Now we also need to make an appointment to the BZA board. Are there any nominations for the APC representative that will serve on the BZA board?
Go by a look in the eye, will it?
I will.
You can't go.
I know.
Is anybody interested in it? What's that?
She asked if it was the House of Representatives.
No.
We just
How many
want.
times do we get to vote?
Yeah, we're not doing that.
I'll nominate Brad Judy.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other nominations for the representative on the BZA board? Hearing none, all those in favor of Brad serving signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Brad, you will be serving on the BZA board then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, Todd.
All right, moving along in the agenda then. Our first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes held on December 7th, 2022. I will look for a motion.
That's a move.
Second,
Second that we approve the minutes as they were made.
first and second, any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Second item on the agenda is APC petition 2023-1. Mark and Stacy Watkins is petitioning to rezone approximately 2.9 acres out of 14.0026 acres from an A1 zoning classification to an A2 zoning classification for construction of a single-family detached dwelling. This request falls under Decatur County Ordinance Section number 920-7 and 915. The property is owned by the petitioners and located just south of 80. It's supposed to be 50 south, 8500 south, 100 west, Greensburg in Marion Township.
Ready to stand or come?
Yep, you can take the podium. Please tell us what your idea is here with your project. And
Okay, our idea is that we have two grandkids living over in that area now. We're going to move over in that area. We bought 20 acres and subdivided that. My son built a house just south of the property, and we've lived on the other side of the county for 28 years and would like to build a home on this side and would like to make it residential, so we can build a home.
Looks like a decent spot.
looks like you got your septic and your.
We have septic approval and I think everything's in order.
Any discussion from the board members?
Is there water there?
Yeah, we hit good water.
Fun place.
Yeah, it's gonna be beautiful.
Anything else from the board? If I don't hear anything else from the board, do we have any neighbors with any concerns or questions? Not hearing any, we will look for a motion.
I make a motion to vote on APC petition 2023-1.
I'll second the motion to vote on 2023-1.
Motion on the floor is to vote on 2023-1.
I'll read the votes. Brian Canella, yes. Tom Cherry, yes. Jay Shetler, yes. Brad Shooty, yes. Sheila Kirkhoff, yes. Paul Stone, yes. Todd Mauer, yes. And Tom Hunter, yes.
Carries unanimously. That's just one step in the whole process, which I'm sure you're aware of. So stay in touch with the ladies in the office and congratulations.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks. Second item on the agenda, APC petition 2023-2. Stuart Reed is petitioning to subdivide approximately 5 acres out of approximately 155 acres and rezone 2.99 acres out of approximately 5 acres from an A1 zoning classification to an A2 zoning classification for construction of a single-family detached dwelling. This request falls under Decatur County Ordinance Section numbers 927 and 915. This property is owned by Reed Brothers Farms, LLC, is located just west of 3189 East County Road 300 North, Greensburg, Indiana, and Fugate Township. Sir, are you at the podium? So,
yeah, so we're looking to build a single family home, be on the west edge of the property there, just behind the woods. We brought it behind the woods, it sits up about 20 feet. above where there's a little creek that runs there. I've got a map here that kind of shows the flood area, which is basically that whole front field is in a, I don't think it's truly a flood zone, but it's a flood area through the DNR on the Beacon website. I was able to find that. So we just brought it to the backside of the woods there.
Once you get across that creek, it kind of starts up the hill.
Yeah, it's about 20 foot higher. So
Yeah.
we got a flood there. We're all in trouble.
How will you access the house? Come
so-
from an existing drive?
So we'll put a drive in next to the house that's there. We own the house property that's right there too. So we'll put a drive in that kind of comes up and around that woods and just come back that way.
As far as going out on the road, you'll use the existing drive.
It'll be a second drive. It should be, I got approval for it.
Okay.
For a second drive?
Yeah.
That house will stay, I assume,
Yeah,
other house.
yeah, my cousin's living in the other
Yeah.
house right now. It's an old dairy farm, so the well there's really good water.
You'll use that same well? That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Any other questions or discussion from the board members?
Then when you do that, you're gonna have an easement, that driveway is gonna be a separate easement going in there.
It'll either be an easement or we'll get it, I've gotta get the
All
property
property.
parceled off, so I might just do that as well. My family owns the farm, so
I know.
it's not too hard to negotiate with them.
I don't know, sometimes it's crazy.
We've had a lot of discussions before this, so.
I understand.
Yeah, no, we're all in agreement.
It's good.
Anything else from the board? Not hearing anything from the board. Is there anybody here from the public? Not hearing any. I will look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to, vote on 2023-2.
Second.
Got a first and a second to vote on 2023-2.
I'll read the votes. Jay Shetler, yes. Ryan Knilly, yes. Tom Cherry, yes. Sheila Kirkhoff, yes. Brad Shooty, yes. Paul Stone, yes. Todd Mauer, yes. And Tom Hunter, yes.
Your motion carries. As I stated before, that's the first process. Stay in touch with the ladies and all will be well.
Thank you.
That is the last thing on our agenda, so.
Rick added.
Afterthought.
It's not, yeah, it's not on the agenda, but.
I'm sorry.
You want the podium?
I talked to Krista the other day, and Brian Robbins is here as well, that had any input on it, but some time ago, the board had passed an ordinance to become a broadband ready community. We took that and sent it to the state, and the state didn't approve the verbiage that had been changed in that previous document from what they had recommended that verbiage to be, basically about charging fees for permits and things like that. So what I've given to Brad earlier, and I think it might have been all in your packet, is the updated copy of what we would ask the board to study, ask questions on, and then be able to vote on that at your February meeting. And then I can take that then to the commissioners and get that done. I really think it's important to become a broadband ready community, but I think also important as perhaps if you've not heard there's different entities throughout the county that might be applying for some large grants for broadband in the near future. And having that box checked for being a broadband ready community, I think might go a long way in getting approval for that. So anything to add, Brian?
No, you said that there are quite a bit of funds coming from the federal government actually, that's going to be addressing broadband. And this is just one more way that we can help prepare ourselves for those kind of investments.
Yeah, so what I had done was take what you guys had approved, I sent it to Brian, Brian sent it to Ernie Hoptree, which is the director for that. Ernie then sent Brian and I back a note, this is what it should or needs to be, and once that's done, well, the lieutenant governor will get us going for being a broadband system.
Yeah, essentially, Rick, the summarization that you gave me, the only change was we had that you're under may do the following. Yeah, essentially, it's may, he needs a change to may not do the
May not be the following.
Yes.
It was, I think it was before, it was saying basically the same thing, that we could, if we really felt it was important, or likely we wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't, and all the other counties have approved. I think there's 75 counties now that are approved, or communities, I should say, that are approved as broadband ready. And that's the same verbiage there.
Yeah.
If you got any questions, let me know. Give me a call and we'll address them as needed. Otherwise, I'll be here at your February meeting. If I'm in town, here.
Okay.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you all.
So no action tonight, we'll just.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it'll be all update now.
Yep. Does anyone on the board have anything else?
I make a motion to adjourn January 2023 meeting.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
It's the outside.
Shut my phone down.
You're fine.
You guys can't nominate.
We can put the ball.
Yeah. Well, when you shoehorned me into it last time, I sat here and they walked up and said, yeah, you're president. Yeah. It's not a choice. Yeah.
Tom?
I'm sorry.
I said the same thing. Only one left. Yeah, that's right. Not allowed to talk.
You just say.
I like that. That's all right.
No, that's all right.
You can.
You can go like this.
No.
It's waste.
We're all glad we use it.
What a way.
That was my high tech.
And if the lights are off, we don't, just what technology you want. There's a government version of class.
You say
Got it.
phone and they didn't get up. There you go.
My husband said, well, who was it? I said, I don't know. I just went along.
Right.
I said, I have to call her. I was kind of
That's how he's in my phone, Richard.
75-year-old lady was buzzing.
Richard
I mean, I
Peters.
was- Hey, doing another copy. I said,
How are you?
I'm good. Now, mind you, I'll be 74 next month. I was thrilled up. I know, my mom's going to I think I got to go back. We came around the corner, Tony said, oh, no, we. I
DFA, I haven't seen one of those.
It's clear, and I just, I'm like.
Dad was on the board.
You had one of them?
Oh, yeah, we were DFA.
You wanna know why I was so close? So you should quit.
No. I'm retired.
Don't want to go back to that.
I'm retired. That's my title, retired.
And I wasn't happy with it. They were.
Yeah, but you're supposed to get a hat for retirement.
Yeah, I've got money out of mine.
Back when my family was here, but my husband wouldn't leave that too. My husband has.
They're gonna be traveling.
Going back to.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
Oh, no, I haven't. I love it. To get your phone. My husband always says this, but I just oh, what's his name?
The water. Very cold. One of the
Thank you.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, they were good. When I got there, Brian said, I'm working hard on it. Good. He said,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, shit, that's what I was. That's what you thought you were gonna say. You don't understand. I thought she was gonna say. I was.
I think that's a great story.
Yeah, when I was on the county, so I was looking up stuff. Just saw that. You guys did it.
I
thought you were gonna.
They don't like to read it. Last night, I got a long way. I'm not sure I can clear that stuff.
Yeah, they did a good job too.
Yeah.
No. I just want to put the guys.
You want to we don't even get up at 5 in the morning, we go to 11 at night. Just water. There you go.
We were just.
No time to. Okay. It worked out really well. So. We have.
Yeah.
I tried to get these two towns. APC. There's nobody on there. It's not. It's not. You know, actually not. It's the last person's name. Yeah. That's what Paul said. Did you turn it into your bank?
Doesn't say what everything else.
I don't know if you know what there's to be on there. Oh, really?
No.
That's what was good about it. It was so.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
It's his last name, Gary.
Yeah. I read those notes and went, oh, dear God.
You were in there for all those paragraphs behind your name. I did too. Call the January 4th, 2023 meeting of the Decatur County Board of Zoning Appeals to order. To comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Decatur County requests that participants in this meeting complete a voluntary anonymous survey that is available on the table in the back of the room. Since first item on our agenda is election of officers, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our lawyer, Missy.
For 2023, we need to appoint 3 officers. We need a president, a vice president, and a secretary. So I'm going to start with the position of president. I'll open the floor for nominations of a president.
Nominate her.
Is there any second on that nomination?
I did.
Yeah, you guys sure you don't want to do it?
No.
I mean, I got these read off this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other nominations?
No.
No, close the nominations. All those in favor of Brad serving as president signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Go ahead,
All right, the second position we need is vice president. Any nominations for vice president?
I nominate Gary. I second.
Any further nominations? I'll close the nominations. All those in favor of Gary serving as vice president signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the last position is that of secretary. Any nominations for secretary?
I'll nominate Rick Owen.
Any further or a second? Is there a second for that
Yes,
nomination?
yes, ma'am.
Second. Any further nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we have Brad, Gary, and Rick.
Super. First item on the agenda, approval of minutes from the November 2nd, 2022 meeting.
As I make a motion that we approve them as read, as sent to us in our emails.
Second.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. First petition, only petition, BZA petition 2023-1, David Culleton, Revling, and Holzbosch Dairy LLC will present a BZA petition requesting a special exception in an A1 zoning classification to build an anaerobic digester on this property. Request falls under Decatur County Ordinance number 925. Property is currently owned by Holzbosch Farm LLC and is located just east and north of 6810 West County Road 700 South, Greensburg, in Jackson Township. David, or I don't know who's going to do the presenting.
David Culleton and Eric Kessler will speak on behalf of the project.
You guys want to step up to the podium and
If it's okay, can Holzbosch anyone kind of start off?
Yeah, sure.
With an introduction?
Yeah,
Give an introduction
right ahead.
to the project.
Just state your name.
My name's Wim Holzboss, represent our family's Holzboss Dairy Farm. I guess we've been interested in a digester project for quite some time, quite a few years. See a lot of advantages in it, and kind of in our research and trying to find somebody to partner up with and to put this in place and in action. We came across Rev LNG, and what struck us most was being able to actually go see other digester sites on other farms that we could talk to the farmers, see how they're being operated. There's I don't know how many, but multiple already running, multiple more being built, and we just share common values and just the way we want to run and handle things in our farm things in the community. So I just wanted to give you a little background on how we came across them, and yeah, we see them as a very valuable partner and somebody good to bring into our community.
Thank you.
Eric Kessler from Rev LNG. I've been with Rev LNG now for 7 years, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development, and created this model with a company that had a decade or better of working with liquid natural gas, compressed natural gas, with utilities. And we look at this as an opportunity for sustainability for ag and reducing an environmental footprint for the community and sustainability long-term, out decades. And when we researched this, we looked at the total picture of what we were bringing there. It wasn't just a digester, it's really a cornerstone of the existing manure management system that they have today. And I thought if it's okay with you, I kind of just describe the process of what they're doing today versus what we're proposing to do, if that makes sense. So maybe the next slide, I think, will give you, start with just a little background of the company. Right now, we're headquartered in Decatur, New York. If you were to put yourself at our headquarters, it would look much like your township here. I grew up on a dairy farm, and we're also in Ulysses, Pennsylvania. And we have partnered with utilities, DTE being the first partner, that we developed 10 farms in Wisconsin. And on those 10 farms, they have digesters and they have renewable natural gas that offsets the cost of those digesters. It's helped the Wisconsin farms with their sustainability. The digesters there, they use biosolids as their bedding versus the host process here use sand. And they also have major concerns about water quality. So a digester reduces pathogen by about 95% because you're putting manure in a process that heats it up to 100 degrees for 18 days. So you'll see South Jersey here, that's our funding partner, and Rev LNG. So our funding partner differentiates from many other developers out there because we will be the operators that you'll see day to day. And the cash that comes into this project isn't grant money. It's not conventional capital for a loan. It's actually all upfront capital that's already present. That's what's unique about this. When we come to the table with a plan, it's all prepaid, and ready to go, capitalized. We're not looking for funding. And he mentioned many projects. 10 have been up and running in Wisconsin, and the 10 that are operating have been actually putting renewable natural gas in the pipeline for 2 years successfully. And at the technical committee, they asked for a reference. So I thought the best reference to share was the chairman of the board of the same committee that you guys are on in the town of Lincoln, Wisconsin. So I forwarded that reference for them to talk to directly. And again, I think it's important to know that we are the ones that will do their trucking the gas to the town, ship that it's going to be injected in, and that we will be operating the digester.
And when you say injected, you're speaking of injecting into the pipeline, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm just trying to clarify because I'm fairly familiar, but the rest of the board may not be. So making sure that you guys understand.
So it goes on a truck first?
Yeah.
And then it's transported how far?
What are we, about 25 miles? And the township is what, Steve? When it be injected?
Right outside Shelbyville. In their area.
Marietta, and Marietta has a compression station you're probably familiar with, the A&R pipeline. And I personally came out and said, hiring a real estate agent to look at the properties for the injection site. The farms were very pro-ag in that area. And we wanted to pick the right piece of land that fit for the application that we're actually using it for. So we'd be building this injection site right over the top of the A&R. So the truck will be filled at the Holzbosch family farm with clean pipeline quality gas, the same quality that you would use in your kitchen to put your stove on or your dryer. That will be hauled down to Marietta, and then it will be unloaded and put in the pipeline. And if we go another slide forward, I think we'll show a couple pictures of what's existingly had. I think this will answer it pretty nicely as we look at this. So the number one there represents the Holzbosch dairy farm, the cows, and they scrape now the manure into a flume that carries the manure to outdoor sand lanes. Where it's going to change is where you see sand separation facility. They have outdoor sand lanes that go directly to that long-term storage. So that sand separation facility will be put in. What the sand separation facility does is it takes the sand that they're using to bed their cows, instead of having to go get fresh sand from a quarry, let's estimate 500 truckloads a year, it will be recycled in the sand room. It'll be separated out of the manure right there and put back under the cows in clean format. So that's a self-sustaining sand separation facility. It benefits the project because we don't want the sand to get into the digester and fill it. So that sand separation facility is going to be new. And then these digesters are in line, as you can see, the long-term storage it goes directly to now. Okay, it would go directly to that long-term storage. Instead of going directly through that, it will go into the digester. When it goes into that digester, the manure, it will be in there approximately 18 days and heated to 100 degrees. The benefit is at 100 degrees, the same bugs that are in that long-term storage produced organically will be in that vessel. And those bugs defecate methane, the same as they're defecating now in the long-term storage methane, but the methane is going to atmosphere, the same amount. We're going to capture it instead of it going to the atmosphere. We're going to capture it in the roof of those facilities. And then you can see the green pipe going to number 3. Number 3 is where I'll call it the scrubber that cleans the gas. When we clean the gas, it's now coming out. It's now coming out of that scrubber into the truck. The truck itself is because there's no pipeline for them to direct inject. Because our first option is to go directly from here to here. This is the interconnect that we will haul through. So that truck takes clean gas and then it's injected here. And that's the big pipeline at that compression station. And it goes through this pipeline and has to be put into a vehicle that used to use gasoline or diesel. And displace it, it has to be burned in a natural gas vehicle. So that's kind of the big picture of the process. To me, the benefits are for the community immediately are safety and trucks off the road. 500, which are coming from sand that's coming out of a quarry. Also, that quarry, now we're not using that natural resource and taking sand from the earth. And then on the backside, when we go to clean their lagoons, they're not taking that 500 loads and put it on soil that may not be it. So there's 1,000 trucks there They also are advanced really because some farms that we deal with in Wisconsin truck all their manure. The whole sponsors have shared with me that their manure is mostly drag line and pipe, and only 30% of it is hauled. Out of that 30%, about 16% of that volume will be reduced as well, because the bugs will eat that fiber and volatile solids when it's in the digester. So that's a real benefit too, because there's trucks off the road immediately on the number of trucks that are taking liquid manure to a field. The other benefit is when that manure goes to that long-term storage, and I touched on it briefly, but I think it's a real benefit, is you have a 95% pathogen kill. That's E. coli, that's blue baby syndrome, and it's something that's prevalent with cows. Is it Yanni's disease? Is that how you pronounce it? Yoni's? That's reduced significantly as well. And we may ask, what are the bugs eating? They're eating the volatile solids, which are the stinky part of manure that will reduce odor. And a real benefit to the atmosphere is that gas that was at the long-term storage that was being released to atmosphere is now being utilized in that vehicle that was using diesel or gasoline, and 1 gallon of diesel requires 62 gallons of water to refine it. So every gallon that we displace is saved water globally. So when we look at that, not only the community benefits, but the state benefits, the country benefits, and globally the benefit. And really it's about partnering with a farm for us that we looked at as a winner. And how do we do that? It was through University of Michigan and Cornell University, and there are, you may say DFA or other co-ops or other sources of producers that have picked the winners and the losers, have taken advantage of infrastructure and are prepared to do what we're doing here. Not every farm is prepared to do this. One would be a succession plan. The second is that they are up to spec with the manure management practices as of today. Some farms are just scraping out of their barn directly into a earth-covered lagoon. That would be real hard for us, because how do you capture the manure? And this sand separation facility, you may ask who has control over that. And we've debated that for a long time, and we have a real definitive line of who's responsible for what. The sand separation facility will be the farm's responsibility, farm permitted, and built under guidance from us, where there's 120 in operation today. So everything that you see here has been done before in the hundreds in Europe, and here in the 20s and 30s. And Wim mentioned we have other projects. We have 30 projects being built today on top of the 10 that have been running for 2 years under our operation continuously.
Will that extractor be a screw extractor? Is that the plan as far as your sand extraction?
When we say extraction, there's a couple of things we're extracting. So which product is
So are you going to do an overfall filter first for solids and then do the screw extraction for sand, or what's the?
That's a great question. I don't have that slide up, and it just always works that way.
That's fine. But it's a technical question. It's
so
really
I've got it. I'm comfortable with it. The sand separation now is not mechanical separation. We're using gravity, and it kind of looks like a lazy river. And that lazy river goes slow, and what happens is sand is heavier than water, and the sand falls to the bottom, and they go in with a payloader, lift it out, put it on a side, pile it, and then it leaches out back into that sand lake. Now it will go into the sand separation facility, and what's nice is we take the manure and we reduce water consumption, because we take that manure and we separate it. You get a liquid and you get a solid. Solid's gonna go for the digester, the liquid's gonna go back into a reception tank to clean the sand and to charge the flume that carries the manure from the backside of the barn into the scraper. So we'll use a sustainable product and separate the manure to clean the sand and also to make the manure flow to the sand building. And that will be done with slope screens and McClanahan sand separation. We have augers and we have shakers that de-water and clean that. And now it'll be all automated. And that's a real advantage because when we build that sand facility or any of these facilities, the infrastructure is there long-term and the components as technology changes can be changed in and out. So any of the augers, the cannons, the shakers, and the cleaners can be fully exchanged. And hose boxers, as they run their dairy, they do a lot of preventative maintenance, as you can see, and it's clean and the equipment looks very maintained, not new. Not all farms look that way. They can have a new dairy and 2 years later they look 20 years old. This sand facility, when they build it, they'll have a maintenance agreement. That maintenance agreement will be with us that have cooperated with the #1 sand separation design and manufacture and operating, Comro. And Comro will help and teach them how to operate and maintain. And we'll check in on every 6-month basis and train their employees to self-perform what they can. But they'll be supervised and overseen.
So the sand separation will be responsible solely of the farm. At the point of exit, staff facility, then you take over and process and at that point. What percent of the 500 trucks a year is the good number, right? We can eliminate off the roads.
I'm going to say 1,000 because it's a 500 coming in and 500 going out. Plus.
Just specifically look at the sand.
Yep.
What percent of that will be recycled? Does that 500 go to 1? Does it go to 400?
That 500 should be eliminated based on our collection system because we want to get 98% of sand recovery. And right now they have 500 trucks that are coming in with fresh sand every year that we believe will be eliminated, and 500 trucks of sand that will be in that lagoon going on the land. Plus another, I'm going to call it conservatively 50% of that 30% of the total manure that will be eaten by the bugs. Shrinkage. And this system, I want to emphasize, is just an inline process to what they're already doing. We're not doing anything new other than refining a practice that's already being done very well.
There is stuff left over. I don't even know how to say this.
You gotta watch her.
But in the big long-term manure storage.
In here.
Yeah, is there stuff left in there before it goes in the next one?
That's a good question. So the manure is coming here, being pushed into a pipe. The pipe is delivering it to the sand room. The sand room is mechanically taking the sand out of the manure. The sand comes back and is put under the cows. And what's left over comes into this tank. And the diagram isn't that great. It goes into this tank as well. And then after it goes into that tank, it goes here. And then it sits here until the host boxes with their permits and their nutrient management plan goes to a field. So your question is really good. What's going to this long-term storage? About 5% total volume less. Okay.
5%.
Yeah. And then what's going to this as well is all the same nutrients, your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Same amount, but more readily available for your crops in your field down here because they're digested and more ready to be consumed by the crop to be utilized in higher increase in yield.
So less odor too.
Oh yeah, significantly less odor.
Being a farmer.
I'm a farm boy, so.
Can do without that.
So I can, odor is a very personal thing. So I felt like I was home when I smelled the odor of silage and manure. Here, you'll see that the odor does not go away. I've been on enough farms that have them and don't have them, but the odor changes. Wisconsin has a calculator. You have to have an ag engineer run it. You have to have a representative from the state. It reduced their odor by 50%. I'm very hesitant to say that because odor is a sensitive thing. Everyone's different. What I find personally and what other people have shared with me is you don't have that lingering odor. It's maybe 2 or 3 days versus 2 weeks. And really in science, we do know that the bugs eat the volatile solids, which is the greasy part of manure, which is what the smelly part of manure is. And it helps the farm too, because the cows aren't going to slip as much because you don't have that greasy film going back into the barn.
I've been by their property many times and I can't believe it's a place where they keep cows. It's so tidy and it is just amazing. That's all.
From when you were.
Yeah, from when we were doing milk cows, it didn't look like that. Nice job though.
Nice job, right? I mean,
and I've seen the trucks and I've actually been in the area when they were spreading and I always said to my husband, I don't smell anything. I'm not exactly sure why, but you all do a nice job. Thank you.
I think I can attest to it. It's because they have good management practices and that they're proud and good community members because not every farm's like that. And that's why we've chosen to partner with them. They have good practices.
That's another thing I wanted to ask. So if you're building the receptacle out by Marietta where you're going to put this gas, you're putting something in there that you'll be able to download that gas there, correct? So if in the future another dairy farm would come along, you're already set up and ready to go. Is that the hope that we get a lot more of these? And
I don't think I could have said it better. Right now, this will be the cornerstone to small farms having access because really the whole SPOS initiative to find us, not only find us, but to take the capital intensity of the project. This project in total will be about probably $30 million when complete. So that station, I don't know if we can go to the next slide, I can show what it will look like in Marietta. The next slide, I guess we'll just skip it around a little bit. You go one more. And one more. And one, that's what the digesters will look like when they're in. And then one more. This is what you're gonna see. And I'm kind of skipping around, but that's what you'll see unloading as well as loading. It looks the same. This is the part, and your line that connects to the truck is no bigger than the line that connects to your grill at home. It's hard to believe. But it will unload, and what there'll be is we'll have extra bays for additional farms in the future. We are making sure when we tap into the line where we inject that we have additional volume, so any capital is necessary up front, we invest in. And we only have to add the concrete and the equipment that it takes to unload.
Thank you.
So yes, the hope is that the smaller farms will have access in the future. Right now, the CapEx is a little bit too high for them. So I don't know if we can possibly go backwards.
How many trucks a day of gas, or what's your production rate on the gas itself?
That's a great question. It will be one trailer every 24 hours. So we'll add 365 trucks to the road of the year.
I have a question also. I live in your back door. I'm in Westwood. And I've noticed, like she said, that it's very neat. It's a very well put together there. There's hardly any bad things that I could say about it, except, and I don't mean to say anything bad, but there are a lot of truckloads of manure being put on a lot of those fields. I don't live close to it. I live in Westport, about 4 miles. But in the summertime, I see those trucks up and down in roads like constantly. So is this going to back that off to where I won't see all that?
That's a great
It
question.
don't matter that I see it, but I wonder about what the neighbors think that are sitting there watching all this all day.
That's a great question. If we go back a couple slides, I can help with that. One more forward, I'm sorry. Right here. So you're saying, will it reduce the
The
truck
trucks
traffic?
down in my
And
area,
it will.
in their area too.
It will reduce it over 1,000 truckloads a year.
Thank you. It ruins the
will.
roads, and everybody knows that. You can't help it.
And you know what?
But I
You're
really
exactly right.
appreciate what they do, and they employ a lot of folks down there. We want to keep that going.
And so what you're saying is one of the initial benefits you'll see immediately with the community. I always like to go back to the community, and I walked in Marietta, am I pronouncing it right, Steve? To the neighbors there, and they want to protect the sustainability of agricultural. They like the concept. And this is sustainability for everyone to win. And the first people to win are the neighbors. And the odor and truck reduction is the number one thing that will happen. And also the pathogen kill of that manure is a real benefit. And I'm gonna say this, and it's really important, when they put that manure on the crop will be able to take almost 70% more of the nutrients than it did before, which before it was able to leach and go other places. Now the crop will use that nutrients.
Well,
And that's a real big advantage.
Now, as a town of Westport, we've had our problems with water here. And the farmers, Let's is up here, and we live down in this gully. So, not your farm. I don't think I've seen anything out of your farm, but a lot of farms down there get excess water from like up here. And anything that would help that would be beneficial to my folks that live in Westport. And you had me though when you said it would be something green and it would be so much better for the environment. Our environment is,
I think your question is well taken and is very pointed, and the benefit is significant. And also pesticides, right? Let's get to the pesticides. Benefit for the manure being in that digester for 18 days at 100 degrees. It kills your weed seeds. So you're not having to use as much pesticide on your land, which then gets into your water table and on, right? That's a benefit to you as well. So the benefits are significant on every stakeholder level.
How long does it take to build this?
We'd like to start in the spring and have gas and sand recovery by midsummer, sand recovery, and by fall, gas being put in the pipeline. And I don't know if you guys can see behind that. I'm just realizing, I don't know if you see the pictures that I have, but you have it in front of you in a hard copy. So where that truck traffic is going to be taken off the road is off of this 700 West. You can see when we were at the technical committee, the one thing that they asked was separation from our drive to the dairy access. So the yellow indicates one of their requested modifications that we have a fence that separates us from any truck ever coming from the dairy onto this drive. And then a gate, and a gate strategic, you can pull in a tractor trailer and the truck. So it's fully out of the road. Also, from the technical committee, we were making our apron big enough so that a truck can exit without crossing the yellow line, and has good visualization from 7 feet high with only a 3-foot incline. Car may have a little visual impediment, but your truck definitely doesn't. We should do that stuff as well. So what this does for us is it eliminates all the hazards if we were ever to come into the dairy. We'd have all the hazards of the ag trucks coming out, feed trucks, people, and all the traffic here that they have on a daily operation. It keeps us very isolated to our own driveway and our own operations. Manure, I think this is one thing that's very important. We're like a lot of other companies, but probably more disliked. And I'll say why we're disliked. The only manure that will go into those two vessels is the manure from these barns. There will never be additional trucks coming in here from another location with any other product that will go into the digester. It will be just host washes.
On that vein, Eric, the scalability of this project along the scalability of the farm, will they continue to match each other if required?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're in excess of probably 20% with the equipment that we put in now of what volume we need to be. And if there was ever to be an expansion, we could put other vessels in, and we have the ability to manage that process. And we plan for the future. And when we look at the future, and this, I had to pinch myself because I came back home. I spent 20 years in healthcare with Johnson & Johnson. I want to benefit the ag. These digesters, what comes out of it, that manure, you said, is going to long-term storage. Manure is not like a food-grade molasses or like a ethanol or a product that we're used to. It's very non-binary, and all that means is that it changes all the time. The percentage of solids, the volatile solids, based on the farm's practices, the cow's diet, how much urine, how much feces, and how much water is added to the sand. They can now have a product that comes out of that digester that's going to the long-term storage at a constant pH and a constant temperature. So long-term, this is very nice for the next generation to be able to actually concentrate the minerals and fertilizer and all the nutrients that would go out of field in so you have less compaction, and you'll keep the carbon, because where this will go in the future is you're releasing a lot of carbon in your field. Because every time you till the carbon that was put in there from the plants eating carbon, photosynthesis is being released. So the end game here is to do less tilling and have a condensed form of fertilizer. And this allows them to be positioned just like they did today, knowing or not knowing, to have the advantage to having a digester which will position them and the community to be ready for future regulations and the future challenges. And that's really what this is all about, is being positioned to be with the leading agricultural practices of the future. It's really like my partners, Steve and Dave here, they're engineers and they have very specialized backgrounds. And I was saying to them, in 10 years, what will we think about when we look at this? It will be the sustainability of agricultural state in America. And the community's embracing it. Everyone that has a touch point to the dairy wins in proportion of what they contribute. If that helps, you know, we want to keep it here in America, here in this community.
Board member, do you have any more questions?
The only thing further I've got, obviously Marietta is not Decatur County. I would
Correct.
assume there'll be some sort of approval process for an installation there. In the event that that is not approved, is there a secondary contingency plan of where this gas would go?
That's what makes it very different from other companies. Our core business is virtual pipeline. And if you go ahead a few slides, all virtual pipeline is that truck right there. Go back one is this. So we can take it into other injection points that we have. Yes. So we're not, the try to do everything in threes, so it keeps everyone honest. So there's two backup plans for that, and we just were with them today, and they were very, what I like to see is they knew and want us to present to their town the benefits that are happening in this town, because they realize that the water's connected, the air's connected, and they're proactive. And I sat there, I was very proud of their insight. It wasn't just about their community. I didn't mention this, but their community, this gas will increase their volume of our future need in this area for gas, because all that volume goes into their pipeline that they can use.
There is an ethanol plant that uses quite a bit of natural gas.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Any other questions, Ward? Thank you, Eric. We have a statement from the Technical Review Committee that I would like Krista to read.
To the Board of Zoning Appeals, in regards to the Rev LNG and Bushwhack Farms petition 2023-1. In regards to the BZA petition 2023-1 for an anaerobic digester to be located on West County Road 700 South, Greensburg, Indiana, in Jackson Township, we have met multiple times with Rev LNG LLC and the Bushwashes and had many questions and answer sessions. We, the Technical Review Committee, are making a favorable recommendation with conditions. The proposed driveway, number one, the proposed driveway off of West County Road 700 South shall be used for the digester only, no farm traffic. The proposed driveway shall be constructed so that trucks may enter and exit the facility safely, approved by the highway superintendent and the area plan director. Local emergency personnel shall receive additional continuing education on safety procedures provided by Rev LNG LLC. The digester will process waste produced on site only. The anaerobic digester will be surrounded by barriers, concrete, and/or a chain link fence. Signed, the committee members.
Eric, I think you pretty well covered all of those in your presentation, addressed all of those issues.
There was one thing they asked is Center Point's actual mapping of
for the supply.
And I actually have that, and we said that we would collaborate and show you their supply run. And we had that meeting today, so that's available. And I promised to bring that, and I showed the defense the rest of the two modifications they asked for.
So you've met with Center Point. And
we did, and I actually have their map where they're proposing, and actually their detailed plans of every property that they go through and what side of the road. So, and I wanted, it was Sandra from Center Point, and we're collaborative and an open book. More willing to come in, board member, technical team member, to show them what their options were to bring the gas in. We had alternate.
That will actually be a benefit for the neighborhood as well.
The gas is from, so that's here.
That's mine.
And I don't know when it's appropriate to share that or who will.
Yeah, that's, maybe it was a question I know that did come up, but I think it was just for curiosity's sake as much as anything. So I don't know that, I mean, unless you guys are concerned about that, utilities going every day.
Okay. So they picked the most favorable,
I'm sure they're
route
trying to get
for
past
the
this.
majority of community members to benefit from the gas.
Yes.
And the least environmental impact.
They want as many hookups as they can get as well.
Yeah. So I went through the options and I thought they were very logical in how they decided the option that they did. And we're willing to share that with you. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to any public comment or questions. Okay, seeing board members, do you have any other questions, thoughts? I heard enough of your thoughts. If not, I will look for a motion. And the motion would include the technical review committee comments, which were discussed by Eric.
I make a motion to vote on BZA petition 2023-1, including the technical
second the motion.
Properly moved and seconded.
This will be very interesting for my board meeting next week.
I do have a couple of housekeeping questions. Is it appropriate to ask?
Yeah, hang on, let her read this
Yeah.
first. We'll make you official.
All right, I'll read the votes. Rick Cohen, yes. Joyce Brindley, yes. Gary Fisher, yes. Janie Livingston, yes. Brad Shudy, yes.
The special exception is approved.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you guys for a very professional presentation and working with the technical review committee the way you guys did. That tends to make these go a lot smoother.
Yeah.
And now we will field your questions.
Yes, so what did you have?
Number one, our commitment is to get better every time that you have an interaction with us. And if not, please reach out and call. And thank you for your time. There are, I think, two things that are left on my radar. Is one, we have outbuildings, which is kind of like what you see behind you, this building where the gas processing is, and the building permit. Is it this committee that does the building permit?
We do in our office.
You do?
We will.
And you guys,
We'll review it and guide you through the process, yeah.
okay. And then the second one is a site plan approval.
Then we'll take care of that too. And a drainage plan.
And a drainage
Will all
plan.
come through our office.
And is that,
Stormwater drainage.
That's administrative and also from
It'll go
It'll go through
through
it.
technical review committee just for oversight essentially.
we'll ask questions, just answer questions, just like we did with the last technical. Okay, I just wanted to make sure
And
that,
our county standards are readily available.
Yep.
Sure, seniors.
and just an estimate of timing for that, what should we anticipate?
The stormwater drainage review takes the longest, but still, we turn it around as quickly as we can. There's a lot of things required and a lot of stats, and so I usually have to have a lot of help in reviewing those. So that takes the longest, but everything else we can turn around in 48, 72 hours tops. I mean, provided we don't have any additional questions. And
I just had a stormwater study done. So if that would help you to see that, I think we turned it in to the county. But it's,
Thank you very much.
that'll help
Yeah, it
because
does help.
Purdue done that.
It always helps to see a format. Thank you very much. We appreciate the time and we appreciate being guests for the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your election to president.
Yes, congratulations.
Last item we have to adjourn. I need a motion.
I make the motion.
I second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Right.
We didn't say anything.